Anthony Joshua.
Your number react to Anthony Joshua, like how he like lost his mind and how he like start bugging and shit.
Joshua has had one of the biggest falls from grace in recent memory. So how did he get here? So I apologize, this video is probably long overdue, but I wanted to explore how Anthony Joshua went from this,
stay hungry, stay humble. I'm hungry, I'm humble in defeat,
to this.
Good boxing has to win. You show your hand. Fuck that shit.
It's crazy to think Anthony Joshua used to say stuff like, I'm humble in defeat and I'm going to stay humble in victory, and quotes such as, never let success get to your head and never let your failures get to your heart. So how did somebody known for those quotes and having good character and also being humble lose all of that reputation all in one night? Well, we have to take it back to the very beginning. Anthony Joshua was born to be a star. He was easily one of the most marketable athletes, and in 2017 he was actually named the world's most marketable athlete. And it was easy to see why he was so marketable. He was tall, he was built like a bodybuilder, he was good looking.
And I bet Chase was hollering, was like, you know, trying to talk to him and type shit, bro. Like, you know, trying to holler.
And most importantly, he had great character and was marketed as being humble. He had this mantra that he would always say, which is stay hungry, stay humble. And Beats by Dr. Dre, Under Armour, and all of these other brands just ate it up. And obviously on top of all of this, he simply was a super exciting boxer, and he had the boxing pedigree to back up his star power. I would consider 2016 to 2018 to be prime Anthony Joshua years. Up until 2018, he KO'd or TKO'd everybody except Joseph Parker, who he had a dominant unanimous decision over. One of the biggest highlights in these prime years, and probably Anthony Joshua's crown jewel of his entire career, is when he knocked out Vladimir Klitschko in a very exciting fight. It was such a big fight for a lot of reasons, but mostly because Anthony Joshua was able to change the guard basically of the heavyweight division, and this basically signaled the end of Vladimir Klitschko's reign over the heavyweight division, and hopefully would signal Anthony Joshua's reign over the division and also propel him to even more stardom. And yes, technically Tyson Fury beat Klitschko 2 years prior, but I don't really want to talk about that fight. I would say when Anthony Joshua took out Vladimir Klitschko with that awesome uppercut, that was when the Klitschko reign truly ended. But anyways, during these prime years, he also delivered a brutal beatdown on Dominic Breazeale. He also KO'd Dillian Whyte in a huge British super fight, and by this time, he was one of the biggest British superstars in boxing and sports in general. And he was also one of the highest paid athletes, and usually was the second highest paid boxer just behind Canelo. But all of a sudden, in 2019, these prime years would end when he would have a minor, maybe to some people, major setback against Andy Ruiz when he made his US debut. I'm not going to go into detail with the Andy Ruiz fight, as many of you know the story already, but Andy Ruiz would basically finish Anthony Joshua in one of the greatest upsets in boxing history. And to Anthony Joshua,
He's not even in shape.
to his credit, he actually took this loss very well, even though this was probably one of the most embarrassing losses up until this point in Anthony Joshua's career.
Losing to a nigga that's fat.
He stayed true to form in his character, and he was very humble and very respectful in his loss, and he made no excuses. In the immediate rematch against Andy Ruiz, he would easily win over him in a very dominant fashion. He stayed
Okay. Got his payback.
behind his jab and used great boxing skill, and by the end of it, he was also humble in victory as well. He would go on to fight Kubrat Pulev and KO him easily, and by this point, it seemed like everything was back on track. Despite a kind of major setback, he was able to right his wrongs in the rematch and continue moving forward and becoming a very big star in boxing. But again, this would be derailed when he would fight Alexander Usyk for the first time in 2021. Going into this fight, Anthony Joshua was actually a solid favorite against Alexander Usyk, coming at around a minus 270 favorite. For Anthony Joshua, he was the champ at the heavyweight division, and he was simply just a bigger, stronger fighter. For Alexander Usyk, he had dominated the cruiserweight division, but this was only his second fight at the heavyweight division, and his first fight against Derek Chisora wasn't all too promising for Usyk despite him winning. So by most accounts, Anthony Joshua was going to get this win over a smaller man like Alexander Usyk and add another notable name to his resume. But as many of you know already, Anthony Joshua simply just got outclassed by Alexander Usyk's superior speed, footwork, and in general, superior movement. And he almost got finished in the last round when Alexander Usyk started pushing the pace and barraging him with punches to the head. Post-fight, he would have a brief break in character when he, in an interview, said, "Fuck being humble, I'm done with fucking losing." Now, this didn't break a lot of headlines because it was a minor break in character, and he was obviously just frustrated in his second loss.
You know, that shit happens, bro. Like, you know, like when you lose and shit, you know, that's what happens, bro.
But maybe looking back now, this may have been a foreshadow for what was to come. In his rematch against Alexander Usyk, he actually put up, in my opinion, a better performance and had a great 9th round where he repeatedly landed on Usyk with really hard shots. But this performance would still fall short, as Alexander Usyk would still be much too fast for Anthony Joshua and landed so well and so precise. And by the end of the fight, Alexander Usyk would get his split decision over Anthony Joshua, and this is where tragedy would strike. So right after the decision, Anthony Joshua, in typical fashion, would congratulate Alexander Usyk, but for some reason would take his belts. He would take these belts to the front of the ring, lift them up and start shouting at the crowd, and out of nowhere threw these belts on the ground, and I think at this point, this is where Anthony Joshua lost his mind. He started cussing out people in the Usyk corner and also some of the people in his own corner, and he was about to walk away out of the whole arena entirely towards his locker room, but then he started getting into it with people in the crowd and other people trying to go up to him, and all of a sudden he got really angry and walked right back to the ring. He met up with Usyk again, who tried to console him, telling him he was a very strong man, but Anthony Joshua didn't want to hear any of it. He immediately asked for a mic and would start one of the weirdest and lowest moments in his career. He started off with the beginning of his career for some reason, and he talked about how he almost got in prison but found boxing, and through boxing he was able to achieve a lot of success in his life. He also tried to talk about the war in Ukraine, but admitted that he didn't know anything about Ukraine. Halfway through, he kind of reminds the crowd that Usyk got a really good win over him and tries to do this weird hip hip hooray for him. I don't know, the whole thing was really painful to watch. But besides this moment being very cringy and painful to watch, this took away a great moment from Alexander Usyk, and he basically made the fight about himself instead of
Damn, just stole my son's shine, bro. You stole his shine.
congratulating Usyk and letting him shine in his win. I think this comment perfectly describes what happened. I've never seen somebody in a loss take the mic and start a whole monologue and basically make the post-fight about himself. As you may imagine, the reaction to this meltdown was not great for Anthony Joshua. The aura of him having great character and being humble in victory and defeat was immediately stripped away in about less than 6 minutes. So what happened? How did somebody who was known for having great character and being very humble basically switch up his persona all of a sudden? Now, I'm no expert on behavior or anything, but I have a couple reasons as to why Anthony Joshua had this meltdown and this character shift. I think the main one was that at his best, he still couldn't beat Alexander Usyk, and this caused great mental strain on Anthony Joshua. I think he was going into this rematch thinking it would be very similar to the Andy Ruiz rematch, in which he would be able to bounce back from that loss. But unfortunately, it wouldn't work out for Anthony Joshua in this rematch, and you just have to imagine getting beat by a guy that already beat you in a fight that you were supposed to beat him, and trying your absolute hardest and still getting beat by the same guy. I also think this stay hungry, stay humble thing is very easy to say when you're winning, and it's very hard to follow up when you're losing. I think up until this point, even after the Andy Ruiz fight, he was built up to be a star. He really only knew winning. I think for Anthony Joshua, he kind of justified the Andy Ruiz loss as a fluke, as he was able to get that back in the rematch, but it was definitely different with Usyk, as he was not able to do it in the first fight, and even when he tried his hardest, he couldn't get it done in the second fight. But who knows? This is just an outsider looking in. Maybe something else contributed to this meltdown, but this still remains one of the weirdest moments I've ever seen live in boxing. So what do you guys think about the Anthony Joshua meltdown and the future of his career? I still want him to fight Deontay Wilder because I've been hyping that fight up since like 2018. But yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's the vid. Yeah, man, like, but shit happens, when you like lose like something, when you lose a game or fight, like that's what happens, bro. Like niggas get mad, niggas get frustrated, bro. Like you know, when you like lose races, basketball games, you know, you're gonna have your like sore losing moments. That's what happens. That's what happens. That's just what happens, and that what happened with Anthony Joshua. You know, but yeah, bro, make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the vibes. Wherever you're checking out, you are.